Hello, everyone. I'm Amelia Bowerly, and I'm a senior product designer in the Attendance Scale group. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about a design leadership program that I'm enrolled in currently. So in July of this last year, I joined the second cohort of students in the Future London Academy's design leadership program. And my cohort includes people who have started or owned businesses, people who are working at senior levels in a range of creative industries, including architecture, fashion, marketing, PR, and design. And my fellow cohort members are from all over the world. And the program's aimed at people who have been working in the creative industries for 15 plus years, so people who have been working for a while. And it's intended to be a kind of executive MBA for creative professionals, with the goal being to teach them more about business and finance and leadership, amongst other things. And the course is held over 9 weeks and over a year, and it's held in both London and in San Francisco. And there are 30 people selected per cohort. And probably the first thing that people ask me when they hear about my doing a designer's version of an MBA is why would you do that? Like, why should designers learn about business? I recently went to a talk with John Maeda, who's the VP of AI and Design at Microsoft. And he told the story of a visit with Paul Rand, the famous designer. And during this visit, Paul Rand apparently told him something to the effect that he wished he would have made more money, because when you can control capital, you can make what you want. And you may or may not agree with that statement, but John's more general point in telling that story seemed to be that access to capital allows you more control over what you design. And in order to access capital, you need to be conversant in the language of business. So for this reason, John was encouraging all designers to learn to speak the language of business. If nothing else, speaking the language of business allows you to advocate for design within businesses and for the value it brings, which in turn affects things like the resources that are allocated to design and to the ultimate power of design within an organization. But designers aren't usually trained to speak the language of business. So how do we as designers learn those skills? And I think that's the core idea of this program, to teach designers the language of business so that they can be more impactful across organizations. So how does the program work? In the program, we have sessions with C-level or VP or senior leaders who worked at a number of very well-known companies, some of which are on the slides. And sessions are on a range of topics, including finance and supply chain, strategy, pricing, negotiation, leadership, and coaching. And we're also visiting a number of successful design studios to learn more about how they work internally and with their clients. And I'm about halfway through the course at this point, so I've done 4 weeks of instruction. And it's difficult to summarize 4 weeks of pretty intensive conversations and lectures into a 10 to 15-minute presentation, but I was thinking that I would share a few insights around mindsets, decision-making, coaching, and team building with y'all today, because these felt like they'd be applicable to everyone. But there's lots more that I'd love to share, including ideas around the future of leadership, around accountability, and around design principles that I hope I can share in a future UX showcase. So first, one of the things I've been doing a lot of over the past 6 months is reading. Each presenter that comes to chat with us recommends a set of books for us to read prior to starting each session. And many of the books are not ones that I would have picked up on my own, because I don't usually read business strategy books in my free time, but having a reason to wade through them has been really great for me. So what you see now is the list of some of the books I've read over the last 6 months. And one of the highlights in reading through these books is really gaining a different perspective on the things that I've experienced at GitLab over the last 5 years. In reading about the different business and product strategies, I've been able to see and appreciate the things that GitLab does really well. I've also noticed a few places where GitLab is kind of going in different directions than some of the books would necessarily recommend. And it's interesting to be able to take a step back and evaluate the company from more of an outside perspective. And there was great information in all the books, and I really feel like I got something out of all of them. But the one I probably thought the most about afterwards was Carol Dweck's mindset. And I believe the ideas in this book are part of the manager training program at GitLab. But if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. It explores two common mindsets that people typically have, a fixed or a growth mindset. And these mindsets determine how we deal with setbacks, how much we're willing to persevere in the face of difficulties, and how we give and respond to feedback. So on the screen now, you can see examples of fixed versus growth mindsets. This is too hard versus this may take some time to figure out, or I'll never be that smart versus I will learn how to do this, though it might take some time. Someone with a fixed mindset tends to not persevere when faced with challenges, while someone with a growth mindset sees a challenge as an opportunity to grow. I suspect that these aren't unfamiliar concepts to most of the people here, but reading the book taught me something else. While we all want to believe that we have a growth mindset, and while I think there's a part of most of us that knows we need to grow and improve, I think nearly all of us have fixed and growth mindsets with regards to different things in our lives. So we might be fine with getting feedback at work and have a growth mindset there, but we might have a fixed mindset with regards to people and how they behave in relationships, for example. So it's less a matter of someone having one mindset or another. It's really more a matter of seeing where the fixed mindset is showing up in our lives and working to adopt more of a growth mindset in those instances. Now, probably doesn't sound super groundbreaking, but reading that for some reason shifted something in my head. Like, I deeply value learning and growing, and that's part of why I go back to school every few years. But in reading through the fixed mindset examples in the book, I had so many moments where I realized, oh, wait, I do think that. And in this instance, my mindset is very fixed. And having that realization helped me reflect on when that mindset's showing up and digging into why, which is something I think we can all do. And within organizational structures, there can also be fixed and growth mindsets with regards to how the organization perceives people and their likelihood to develop. So really being aware of mindsets and paying attention to when those fixed mindsets are showing up can be important in terms of like how organizations are run as well. On a related note, I'd say that a key aspect of the course so far is about creating moments for self-reflection and for thinking more about what are our default reactions in different situations, and further, how can we start building better defaults for how we act and operate in the world. In one of our very first lectures, for instance, we talked about how we as humans are predictably irrational. And what does that mean? There's usually a trade-off between short-term choices and needs and longer-term impacts. And as human beings, we often will optimize for the short term and ignore longer-term costs, even if it's not strictly rational to do that. And that decision point could be called the donut versus salad moment, because while donuts often taste better in the moment, they're rarely the right longer-term choice in terms of our health and other things. But longer-term consequences are more difficult for us to imagine, so they're also easier for us to discount. And unless we have an impressive amount of willpower, which I certainly don't, we'll often choose the donut over the salad, and nearly every time. So one of the things we're invited to think about are the times when we choose the metaphorical donut instead of the salad. Like, when do we do that and why? And how do we put tools in place so we can choose the salad more often than the donut? This is just one example of a question that we were asked, and perhaps a slightly silly one, but throughout the course, there have been many of these really crystallizing metaphors and consequent invitations to dig into what we do and why. So when I make a decision now and I'm struggling between a couple of options, I try to ask myself that question: what's the donut here? What's the salad? Can I try to choose the salad, whatever that option might be? And can I make a better decision? And how can I start building better default reactions at work and in my life? So in terms of the sessions themselves, As mentioned, the content is extremely varied, but one of my favorite sessions so far was aimed at helping us improve our coaching skills. So one of the visuals that stuck in my mind from the session on coaching was the following. Coaching is not an expert at problem solving telling you how to solve your problem. Coaching is two people sitting or standing side by side, looking at the problem together. So it's not someone acting as an expert and sharing their wealth of information. It's two people focusing on a problem together. In my life, I have often resisted a coaching role previously because I don't particularly like acting like an expert who has all of the answers. Most of the time, I don't feel like I have any of the answers. But they taught us that having the answers isn't the key to being a good coach. The key to coaching is the quality of attention you're able to provide. It's about making things safe and listening a lot and asking great questions. And that's what the quotation in this slide is about. And for me, that way of reframing coaching feels just a lot more approachable. As while I rarely feel comfortable claiming expertise, I am good at paying attention and asking questions. So maybe that's an area I could apply growth mindset to and work on improving. So one of the great things about this course is that they aren't just giving us ideas, they're providing us with really concrete tools that we can use to practice the things that we're learning. For coaching, for example, they set up an exercise where we got to coach our cohort classmates using the GROW model. So GROW stands for goal, reality, options, and way forward. And it's also an exercise that people can do with each other to find a way forward with a difficult problem they're facing. How does it work? Essentially, someone identifies a problem they'd like coaching on. The coach then walks them through a series of questions, and some of which you can see on the cards. At the end of the process, the person with the problem walks away with a tangible course of action. And having tried this exercise, I can confirm it's very powerful. And it helped me realize that coaching is a practice. It's a process that can be taught. And I loved how tangible and approachable this whole exercise was. And I think that this is something that many people could use in many areas of their lives. And learning how to do this was a real highlight for me. And this also feels like something we could very well try here, especially with regards to things like career coaching. Another tool that they shared with us was the manual of me. Ideally, this would be completed as a team so that all the members of the team could see how others on their team like to communicate, as well as their needs, expectations, and goals. And the hope is that with this information, managers, for example, could communicate better with the people they manage, and team members can communicate better with each other too. And it struck me that this kind of process could be extremely helpful, especially as new teams are forming, which happens periodically. And I also had the thought if I was managing a team, that's probably the first thing I would do with people. And again, this just feels like a really tangible tool that we could try using here. So that's kind of a whirlwind summary of a few of the things I've learned thus far in the course, with an emphasis on the mindset, reflection on our default reactions, donut versus salad thing, and coaching and communicating expectations within a team. There's a lot more to share. And some of the other things I'd love to talk about in the future are around the future of leadership and about accountability. But I also visited a number of really amazing design studios, and pretty much every design studio shared their design principles with us. And some of them were really inspiring. And in future, I'd also love to share those with you all, because I think we might have an opportunity to work together as a department to re-examine, maybe even refresh our design principles together. And I could save that for a future presentation. But in the meantime, I'd absolutely love to share more about any of these tools with anyone who's interested. And if anyone would like to learn more about the coaching technique or the map of me, please let me know. We can schedule a time to talk about this or about anything else. And if enough people are interested, I can perhaps create some of these tools so we can share them with the team more generally. So please let me know if there's specific things that you'd like to learn more about. And that's it. Thanks so much for listening. I hope there is something in there that was useful for you all. And I'll wrap it up at this point so we can save room for questions. I will look at the doc. Will, do you want to vocalize?
Yeah, I've got the first question. You kind of answered it as you were going along, so I might have to adjust it a little bit. You did recommend a specific book, but going back to your slide on the reading list, are there ones that you would recommend for us in UX?
Yeah, the mindset book is really good. I feel like a lot of the product development books that we've read felt very familiar in terms of a lot of the ideas that they were recommending as sort of best practices are things that we kind of already have baked into our processes at GitLab. So a lot of the books that felt like really new information were not necessarily related to, say, product development, but were more about helping us to grow as individuals. Like the mindset book, I think another one I just read, which I'll have to look up the author's name, it's called Transitions, and it's about weathering different transitions in your career and in your life. And that book was also incredible. So it's just kind of these books that I think each person kind of read and that really changed their perspective on something or felt really meaningful to them. So having this really highly curated list of books that really moved people or meant something to them has been great. And yeah, not all of them have been related to strictly to processes around product development. So I think like if there's like an area that you're particularly interested in, I can probably like point out which book is maybe the best fit. Gina, it looks like you have a question.
Yes. So I know you mentioned using the donut salad metaphor, which I really liked, but I was wondering if there's a specific example that you could give of when you applied your learnings to your current position at GitLab. I feel like that would be super interesting to understand.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me personally, a lot of it is about having difficult conversations. I think that there's some conversations that I would prefer to avoid. And for me, that's eating the donut versus having the salad. Whereas, having the difficult conversation, even though it's not fun, it is better for the longer term. So that is an example of a time where I feel like I'm probably choosing the short term over the longer term. But I think, even when we're talking about, we've talked about this a lot, like iterations and MVCs and like doing small things and I feel like there's probably a donut versus salad moment in some of those decisions as well, which, I think we could talk more about how far we want to push that because I don't know that we can always choose the salad in terms of like product development, but like maybe we should be choosing it more. So I think that those are a couple things that are popping into my mind. But yeah, I also just in life generally, I feel like I'm having that moment in my head where I'm asking donut versus salad. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I
Sure.
totally relate to the difficult conversations, by the way. So I feel
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Aren't any other questions in the agenda? Does anyone else? Oh, Jeremy, can donuts be a salad hopper? Maybe, yeah. That's a good way of like breaking down that binary. I like it. Anybody else have anything? Okay. If not, I can hand it back to you, Jackie.